Yeah, usually it's the AI. Oh, yeah, you probably did a lot of those.
A lot of the AI. Okay, so I don't do you want to.
It's actually not human nature to think outside in. Most people think inside out, which is most engineers and also some designers. That's getting hot too.
Well, welcome, Alice. Thanks for coming for Acrodat channel. So I'm very curious. Like, you have been spending over 15 years in the design industry, both in physical and also digital product. Can you share with us what's your thoughts throughout your journey? How do you grow into the design leadership?
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. Yeah. So my path was a little non-traditional, actually. I started off as a manufacturing engineer at a medical device company, actually multiple medical device startups. Throughout that whole time, I was not very passionate about engineering in general, but I learned a lot. I made a lot of friends, had mentors, and then learned the problem-solving approach from that perspective, and all of them are mostly physical. There's some digital connected to it, but throughout that whole time, I was kind of researching on my own, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I came across General Assembly, which was back in 2013 when it was like just starting, and then did some courses there. That wasn't enough because I lacked the skills, like the hard skills, the design, like Photoshop, Figma didn't exist yet. So pretty much doing more research, and then finally did a master's in 2014 to 2016 in human-computer interaction. And DePaul University is in Chicago. And I loved it. I loved the course. I loved the psychology part of it. I loved the design part of it. Also, during that time, I was working full-time in engineering. But I kind of applied some of those concepts I learned and solved a lot of those like mystery problems in engineering. But yeah, in 2017, I fully switched. Like, I actually switched to a product manager role first for 6 months. I mean, I loved product thinking, but not so much the entire product manager role. So I kind of switched back into product design and then worked my way up from there. Yeah, doing legal tech, real estate tech, and then now doing rewards and incentives.
What did you learn throughout your journey, and how do you apply some of the knowledge as an engineer?
I think that is the problem-solving piece. Actually, when I was an engineer, I was doing a lot of like thinking on my own. I didn't really utilize, the design thinking approach where I would actually go in there doing the observation and talking to people. A lot of engineers actually think that way. Like, it's actually not human nature to think outside in. Most people think inside out, which is most engineers and also some designers too. So I kind of utilize those principles to apply to the problem solving. And that's with talking to people, understanding their mindset. And, even in the physical world, people are still doing a process, right? Like, UX is all about processes and like thinking, how to make something better, whether or not they're assembling something together or they're designing something.
You mentioned like inside out and outside in mindset is very interesting. I was in software engineer before as well. I feel like engineer, when you're thinking about the perspective, you have a very clear task. You understand what you're going to build. So you are trying to figure out the way to get there. Design is more like you have such a vague or abstract problem. You are actually trying to define and kind of like converge, be clear what task you should be solving. What I think like one of the biggest question I always ask is that the right problem I'm solving right now?
So. I love that. It's about the problem space. When I was doing my master's degree in human-computer interaction, we have a whole class on problem solving. We're not even talking about the solutions yet. It's about problem solving, exploring the problem space, doing research. Once you understand the problem space very well, who you're solving for and designing for, I think execution just comes very naturally and it comes easily. But most of the time, we're missing that piece in any organization that I have been in. Like, people don't really understand the problem itself. or the users or personas or something like that.
And it's a process, right? A lot of the time, users or customers are evolving. So even you run research like with them and do a deep dive, sometime like over 2 years or 3 years, that problem might change and shift.
Yep.
So it is quite important. Like, how do you keep yourself up to date and really empathize their current issue? It requires a lot of, like, as you mentioned, it's like an interaction with human, like understanding human beings.
Yeah, for sure. I always vouch for user research. It's not practical to do full research every time. It just depends on like which stage of the projects or initiatives you're in, but always do research to kind of validate our assumptions. I think that's always what I tell my designers or even PMs or anybody.
And I know you have been building a design team at Tango, right? And can you share with us how that journey looks like and how do you build a high efficient design team?
Yeah, actually, I can talk about the Roofstock one because Tango, we actually had a small team, which is still very efficient. We got acquired. But at Roofstock, I actually scaled the team from 3 to 13. Some of them were from acquisitions, but still sort of understanding the different skill sets, different strengths, different improvements that people would need. First, I had 2 visual designers and 2 senior product designers at the time. And scaled it to having a senior user researcher to run research, like discovery research, and then multiple senior product designers and mid-level designers and marketing designers, like visual marketing designers, in a short amount of time, because the company scaled from around 200 to 700 people in the matter of like 1 or 2 years. I don't remember. That was like way back when. But that was my experience with like scaling teams very fast, interviewing. Oh my gosh, interviewing was actually very challenging, right? At the time, it was like hard to find designers. Like we couldn't find designers because the market was so hot.
Almost 4 times in 2 years. So what are some of the challenges during that process?
Not only from a recruiting perspective, but also like trying to understand what is the gaps that are missing so far. Like what are the strengths that the team currently have? Because product design is so broad, right? You have interaction design, you have design strategy, design operations, all of that stuff. So understanding the current skill sets and where their gaps are for each team is very crucial to understand what we want to hire or who we want to hire. And at that time, I was actually overseeing both consumer side of the business and the enterprise side of the business.
I see.
So they're very different skill sets also within that. So for consumer facing, naturally you will need someone who is a product designer, but also very visual oriented, right? Because you're designing consumer facing apps. Or websites. And for enterprise, it's more like a lot of back-end processes, understanding the information architecture, the usability.
I'm curious how you build impact to PM, to engineering team, like as the leader of the design team. How do you advocate the impact for design?
Oh yeah, I'm doing that right now. So how do I advocate? I think just being in there, being present, and also being the partner of the product team and the engineering team, and then work together as a trio. That's what I most value and how I advocate for it. I don't pitch. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of trying to pitch that, design has value. For me, I just do it like to show the value and then have my design team to kind of share their work. And have weekly cadence or like recurring cadences so that we can bring everybody into the process. A lot of times I think product teams, not so much product teams, but engineering teams are, they feel kind of left out because they're sometimes at the end, right? But you can bring them earlier into the process. So it's more about respecting the other disciplines and also collaborating with each other rather than, that's your work, that's product's work, or that's engineer's work. Right?
I think what you mentioned, how you actually collaborating and involve other teams early in the phase, I think really empower the team, allow them to have some sort of ownership in the process is important.
Yeah.
So they are engaged and they are bring along in the design process. Yeah.
And I have one more comment to add is that sometimes as you talk to the engineers or talk to the PMs, they actually are very interested in design, like whether or not they are product design or maybe they're very creative in their own ways. Everybody wants to learn from each other. So I kind of empower that through collaboration and including them into the process.
I really like what you mentioned, being more inclusive, because design is all about making informed decisions.
Yes.
Right? So to make the best decision, you need more input from product, understanding business.
Yeah, we can't do it in a vacuum. Yeah. And that's that no.
Same as engineer, like to understanding what can be feasible, what are the constraints are important. Actually, like really important to make the right design decision.
When I was a designer, or doing IC roles, I share it when I'm not done. And I would love to get feedback. That's how you get feedback early on, and then not just having your own assumptions be in your design, but getting other feedback's super important. But that's just me. I know a lot of different designers have different approaches to designing. Sometimes they want to get to like a certain point before they share it out. But I think it's always good to share early, like when they're ready to share early enough so that they can feedback and iterate on it.
You're chatting about scaling the team. I think recruiting is such an important part to building a really effective and well-oiled team. How do you identify like strength or skill sets from different people?
That's a good question. I think at the interview stage, it's a little harder. I mean, they do have portfolios and stuff, but I kind of have them walk through their previous projects and how they talk about their projects, and then where their strengths lies when they're talking about those projects. And I would ask questions for those projects. I actually don't do any, I don't believe in whiteboarding. I mean, as myself, like I'm not someone who is very good at on the spot kind of thing. So I kind of respect that. Some people, they need time to think, and I respect that. But how I identify people's strengths during the interview, not only do they talk about their projects, but how they respond to your questions is very important too. And sometimes I would ask about how they work with PMs and how they work with engineers. What is their approach to first designing something? I also really ask about when they start a project, how do they start it? If they first jump into designing without understanding the business and also understanding the product, like the problem, I would take that as a red flag. But that's during the interview. Like the interview is kind of hard sometimes. When they're in it, whether it's a new team or existing team or something, I would kind of need to see their work first. Like some people are very good in visual design, and some people are very good in like strategy and like overall kind of user flows and interaction design. I would have to see like how they do it and how they present their work and to be able to assess it. Actually, I do have a question for you. How do you assess?
Depends on the team. I think one thing probably like you are doing similarly is identify what are the skill sets you need in that team, or what are some of the skill sets you are lacking for that position, right? And then I think when building a team, one of the things are important is like how do you have different backgrounds, different knowledge, and different skill sets that can easily plug and play with each other. And once you identify those, you have a good understanding or big picture, like roughly what type of projects or what type of skill sets I want a little bit more. I think like depends on what you mentioned, like scale the team so fast, it might be the challenge because you have to, like some of the people, you have to ramp them up to understand what they are good at. Like very similarly, what you mentioned is like I pay a lot of attention to the process. How do they solve the problem? How do they think? And also soft skills as well.
Soft skills.
I think design is such a unique job position, it's not only about execution, right? Like comparing to engineer, if you can execute very well, you don't have to talk too much, right? However, as designer, as you mentioned, it's like you need that collaboration skills. How do you pitch to stakeholder? How do you do stakeholder management? How do you actually sell your design? How do you persuade other teammates or onboard them to your idea? It's also a very, very important skill. Actually, I think a lot of the time, younger designer didn't pay too much attention to those skills.
Yeah, they have challenges. I don't know if you've seen Figma's like a design career or career ladder or something, and it talks about the hard skills and the soft skills, and I kind of use that as an inspiration to build like the Tango career ladder, you know, my current company's career ladder. I had a lot of fun with it, and that's when I talk about the soft skills and hard skills, and I kind of put that into like their OKRs and put that into their, you know, performance review. Like it's not just like, hey, action and impact, but it's also your communication collaboration, whether you're able to lift your team up, like, you know, across team. And like you said, being able to persuade and convince, like, hey, why is this design decision the better way versus another way?
Also very interesting to your perspective as a design leader or in the leadership role. What are some of the character you really value? And how do you think the designers, especially when they grow, which portion they should pay attention to?
Portion as in?
Like skill sets.
Oh, skill set. Communication. Being able to articulate to anybody, not just your design team or PMs or engineers, but everyone, to be able to recognize your target audience and being able to speak to them, knowing what they care about is very important. Actually, it's even more important as you move up, like getting promoted or something. So that's very important, like being able to talk to, you know, sometimes you will have to talk to a CTO or C-level person or director level people, right? So being able to talk to them and not be afraid, I think that's really important. Articulating your projects. Sometimes like when designers show their work, they don't articulate the context because they assume that your audience understands what it is. But if you think about all the people that are so busy on everything else, people don't always know what you're talking about. So you always have to like kind of start with an introduction, start with the context, start with the background first.
And the storytelling portion.
It's like the framing. Like framing, framing is very important.
I also think one skill is important is strategic thinking. That's something you can definitely grow in your career is when you get started, you probably like only design within your scope. You don't consider how that scope is fit into the bigger picture, like end to end, even fit into the business. But as designer, like starting to mature, I feel like they're starting to think more end to end flow, broad, and looking into like, okay, how my design fit into the overall business? What are some of the impact? And then that will actually help you leveling your priorities as well, right? Like you can start to understand how important is the current feature I'm designing for? Should I pay attention to the other touch points or to the other segments? Like we mentioned a little bit about, it's like, are you solving the right problem? That's part of it as well. Like you can start figuring out, is there any other part I can do? And how I can be proactive and solving some other portion of the problem might bring a bigger impacts to the design.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between startup companies versus like medium-sized versus like very large companies. Very large companies, maybe the designers are doing that one thing. And then medium-sized company, maybe like one or two things. But in like the startup world, we're always thinking about end-to-end experience. I think it's going to be very hard for bigger companies to do end-to-end depending on the organization, how it's formed. Sometimes it's beyond like what they can do, like how they can influence. There might be other initiatives and priorities that are happening up there that you don't know.
Right. I'm curious as well. Is there any challenge you grow the impact in the company? How do you influence for example, like the C-level, like how they make the business decision, how they involve design early in the phase as well.
I've run into those challenges many times, like being able to have to convince C-levels on why this is important. First, being confident about the value you're bringing, and then also being able to communicate to the C-levels, not just from a design point of view. A lot of them don't understand the design languages. So how you translate from a design language to something that they care about, whether it's a business metric, whether it's like engineering, I don't know, like maybe it's a CTO or maybe it's a CEO that cares about business metrics, right? Then you kind of translate those into those kind of metrics. It'd be like, oh, you know, this NPS score is going to increase by like 20%, or like CSAT score increase by whatever percent, right? So speaking in those languages would be something that I would use to show why it's impactful for design. Yeah, because like if you tell them specific design terms, they might not understand or they might not care. It really depends on what they care about. So it's sort of like research too, understanding what they care about, what your target audience care about in order to persuade them.
So I think like design industry is also changing rapidly as well. What are some of the new skills you think design leaders can develop to improve the team's impact?
I think business, well, I don't know different design leaders what their skills and strengths are, but business usually comes in very critical, like understanding the business side of the organization and how you mix that into your design approach, right? Design leadership is very important. And that's how we talked about being able to speak to the rest of the organization. I actually went to, I don't know if you heard of Brian Rumsey. He actually created a CDO school. So I attended that a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah, that was very eye-opening. It talks about a lot of those business principles and business knowledge, how you apply that as a design leader. And actually a lot of design leaders are in there. I would highly recommend.
Also, I think with the technology changing, the relationship between product management, design, and engineer is probably going to shift as well. What's your perspective on that?
I have a few perspectives with like emerging AI coming with different tools like Cursor, Figma AI, all the different tools, right? I know like a lot of startups are doing different tools to help out different teams, but I kind of see the operating model changing. Product development process will change because AI is so efficient that why we do research at the beginning, not only to understand what people want, what they need, what their behaviors, pain points are, but it takes time. Whereas like now you have AI where it can do a prototype and you can just sort of have people start using them and gathering feedback so quickly. I think that particular process will change in the next 3 to 5 years. But I don't really have any data to back that up, but it's kind of where I see the trend going, and everybody's kind of been talking about it on LinkedIn and different design communities and also like engineering communities too. So that's kind of where I see it changing. I don't know how it would change, but I do think that the tools we're going to use will change. The process we're going to change because everything's going to be more efficient. Productivity is going to be all-time high. So how do we rearrange that? How do we adapt to it is some of the things that I'm curious about.
A lot of the skills, it's going to kind of like
I think so.
machine, right? Like so maybe the roles is going to evolve as well. I already see design and also product management role is starting to overlap with each other. Even the job functionality, right? So how you produce kind of a unique value perspective as a designer or even like as design team, how do you involve in the business decision? How do you influence the business decision? Might be shifting as well.
I agree with that. Yeah, I look forward to seeing how that shifts and then also trying to adapt and then bring the teams along with me to adapt. I mean, it's definitely a very ambiguous or uncertain time right now, but it's also very exciting, right? Because you have AI that can help you out. Like AI is actually uplifting, like all these tools, right? We use Claude to kind of like help us have like ideas bounce off of each other. It's like real time, right? Sometimes you can't get somebody on a meeting, but you can ask AI to kind of bounce off, not to replace anything. I still think that humans are so creative in a way that AI can kind of help you get even more creative, more ideas. And then just makes things better, like better user experience. Yeah, and better teams. Whatever you can learn, you can ask AI.
I agree with that. I think in the future is like instead of replacing, it's more like efficiency will be boosted with AI. And also I think like as designer, it would be good to engage with and understanding how AI tools works, right? Like that will help you be a more effective designer, essentially.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Alice, for coming over to our channel. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks.